The morning sun hadn't yet burned through the fog when Captain Ryan Holt heard the scream. It tore through the quiet of the East Texas woods like a blade through cloth, sharp, urgent, unmistakably human. His canine partner, a German shepherd named Ember, was already on her feet, ears forward, body tense as wire. The radio on Ryan's belt crackled to life. Dispatch, missing child, 7 years old. Last seen near the edge of Pinewood Reserve, a sprawling tract of wilderness that swallowed hikers whole if they didn't know the trails. Ryan didn't hesitate. He clipped Ember's lead, grabbed his pack, and moved. The forest was dense here, all tangled roots and low-hanging branches that clawed at his jacket. The air smelled of wet earth and pine resin. Somewhere in the distance, a crow called out, a single guttural note that hung in the air like a warning. Ember's nose swept the ground in tight arcs, nostrils flaring, her breath visible in the cool dawn air. She was trained for this, trained to find the lost, the injured, the ones who couldn't find their way back. But what she found that morning wasn't what anyone expected. Ryan pushed through a thicket of wild mesquite, boots sinking into soft mud, and stopped. Ember froze beside him, body rigid, eyes locked on something ahead. At first, Ryan couldn't see it. The fog was too thick, the light too dim, but then the shape emerged. A girl, small and barefoot, standing in a clearing about 30 yards out. Her clothes were torn, her hair matted with leaves and dirt. She wasn't moving, wasn't crying, just standing there perfectly still like a statue carved from the forest itself. And beside her, sitting calmly on its haunches, was a dog, but not just any dog. It was wild. Ryan knew that much immediately. The ribs showed through its patchy coat, the ears were torn at the edges, and its eyes, yellow and unblinking, held none of the softness of a domesticated animal. This was a creature that had survived on instinct alone, a scavenger, a fighter, the kind of dog that animal control spent weeks trying to trap, the kind that didn't trust humans, the kind that bit first and ran second. And yet, it wasn't moving either. The girl's hand rested lightly on the dog's head. Her fingers curled gently into the fur behind its ears. The dog's tail was still, but its body was relaxed, its breathing slow and steady. It looked calm, obedient, almost reverent. Ryan's heart hammered in his chest. Ember growled low, a warning rumble that vibrated through her chest. She knew danger when she saw it. She'd been trained to respond to threats, to protect her handler, to act. But she didn't lunge, she didn't bark. She just stared, confused, as if the scene before her defied every instinct she'd been born with. "Stay," Ryan whispered, his voice barely audible. Ember obeyed, though her muscles stayed coiled, ready. Ryan took a step forward. The girl's eyes flicked toward him, dark, wide, unreadable. She didn't speak, didn't smile, didn't flinch. The dog's ears swiveled toward the sound of his boots on the wet leaves, but it didn't turn its head, didn't growl, didn't move. Ryan stopped. Something about this wasn't right. Something about the stillness, the silence, the strange tableau of girl and beast in the half-light of dawn. It all felt wrong. Or maybe not wrong, just impossible. He keyed his radio. His voice was steady, but his pulse was not. "Dispatch, this is Captain Holt. I've got eyes on the missing child. She's safe, but we've got a situation here." The radio crackled. "Copy that, Captain. What kind of situation?" Ryan looked at the girl, looked at the dog, looked at the hand resting so gently on its scarred, battered head. "I don't know yet," he said quietly, "but I think we're going to need animal control, and maybe someone who understands what the hell I'm looking at." He lowered the radio. The girl tilted her head just slightly, and for the first time her lips moved. She didn't speak loud enough for him to hear, but the dog's ears flicked forward, and its tail gave a single, slow wag. Ryan's breath caught in his throat, because in that moment he realized something that would shake him to his core. This wasn't a rescue, this was something else entirely. But what he uncovered in the hours that followed wasn't just a story about a lost child and a wild dog. It was a truth that would force an entire community to question everything they thought they knew about instinct, empathy, and the invisible threads that connect the broken to the ones who refuse to leave them behind. And it all started with a girl who shouldn't have survived the night. 3 days earlier, the town of Crestwood, Texas had been a place where nothing much happened. It was the kind of town where people left their doors unlocked, where the high school football games drew bigger crowds than the 4th of July parade, and where everyone knew everyone else's name and their business. The fire station sat on the corner of Main and Oak, a squat brick building with 2 bays and a faded American flag that hung limp in the humid air. Inside, Captain Ryan Holt sat at a scarred wooden desk, filling out incident reports by hand because the department's computer system had crashed again and no one had the budget to fix it. Ryan was 42, lean and sun-worn, with the kind of face that looked older in shadow and younger in light. He'd been with the Crestwood Fire Department for 18 years, the last 6 as captain. He knew every back road, every dry creek bed, every house that still had aluminum wiring, and every family that couldn't afford to replace it. He knew where the flash floods hit hardest in spring and where the brush fires started in summer. And he knew Ember. She lay in the corner of the office now, chin resting on her paws, eyes half closed but always watching. Ember was 5 years old, a German shepherd with a black and tan coat that gleamed like polished wood when the sun hit it right. She'd been trained at a facility in San Antonio, certified in search and rescue, wilderness tracking, and disaster response. She could find a person buried under rubble by scent alone. She could track a trail 3 days old through rain and wind. She was, by every measure, exceptional, and she was Ryan's only real companion. He lived alone in a small house on the outskirts of town, a place with a sagging porch and a yard full of wildflowers he never mowed. His ex-wife had taken their daughter to Dallas years ago, and the visits had grown fewer and farther between until they stopped altogether. He didn't blame them. The job consumed him. The calls at 3 in the morning, the weeks spent training Ember, the quiet hours spent thinking about the ones he couldn't save. It wasn't a life anyone else could share. But Ember didn't judge. Ember didn't ask questions. Ember just did the work. The radio on his belt crackled. "Station 3, we've got a wellness check on Maple Street. Neighbor says she hasn't seen Mrs. Calloway in 2 days. Ryan stood, clipping the radio back to his belt. Ember was already on her feet, tail wagging once, twice, ready. "Come on, girl," Ryan said. "Let's go." They took the truck, windows down, wind pulling at Ryan's hair as they drove through town. The streets were mostly empty at this hour, just a few pickups parked outside the diner and a kid on a bike weaving down the sidewalk. The sky was pale blue, streaked with high clouds that looked like brushstrokes. It was early September, the air still thick with heat but tinged with the first hint of autumn. Mrs. Calloway was fine. She'd gone to visit her sister in Longview and forgotten to tell anyone. Ryan helped her carry her groceries inside, made sure her smoke detector was working, and drove back to the station with Ember's head hanging out the window, tongue lolling. It was a quiet day, a good day, but that night, everything changed. The call came in at 9:47 p.m. Ryan was at home, sitting on the porch with a beer he wasn't drinking. Ember sprawled at his feet. The stars were out, thick and bright in the Texas sky, the kind of stars you only saw when you were far enough from the city that the light pollution couldn't touch you. The air smelled of dry grass and distant smoke, someone burning brush somewhere west of town. His phone buzzed. "Dispatch. Captain, we've got a missing child. Mia Brennan, 7 years old. Last seen at Pinewood Reserve around 7 p.m. Parents just reported it. Search and rescue is mobilizing, but we need you and Ember out there now." Ryan's stomach dropped. Missing child. Pinewood Reserve. After dark, he was already moving before he hung up. Ember sensed the shift immediately. She was on her feet, eyes locked on Ryan, body tense with anticipation. He grabbed his pack, checked his radio, clipped on Ember's working harness, the one that told her this wasn't a game. This was the job. They drove fast, lights flashing, the truck rattling over the dirt roads that led to the reserve. The forest loomed ahead, a black wall of trees that swallowed the horizon. By the time they arrived, a small crowd had gathered at the trailhead. Parents, neighbors, a deputy from the sheriff's office with a flashlight and a grim expression. Mia's mother, Karen Brennan, was there. She was a small woman, thin and pale, her hands shaking as she spoke to the deputy. Her husband stood beside her, arms crossed, jaw tight. They looked like people who'd already imagined the worst. Ryan approached. "Mrs. Brennan, I'm Captain Holt. This is Ember. We're going to find your daughter." Karen's eyes filled with tears. She was right there. We were hiking. She wanted to see the creek, and then she was gone. We called and called, but I need something with her scent, Ryan said gently. A jacket, a toy, anything she wore today. Karen handed him a small purple backpack. It smelled like fruit snacks and sunscreen. Ryan knelt beside Ember, let her sniff the fabric, watched as her nostrils flared and her eyes sharpened. "Find her," he said quietly. Ember's nose dropped to the ground, her tail straightened, and she moved. They entered the forest, flashlight beams cutting through the darkness, voices calling Mia's name into the void. The trees pressed in close, their branches tangled overhead, blocking out the stars. The air was cooler here, damp, heavy with the smell of moss and rotting wood. Somewhere in the distance an owl hooted, a low, mournful sound that seemed to echo forever. Ryan followed Ember, his boots crunching over dry leaves, his breath steady, but his heart racing. He'd done this 100 times. He knew the protocols, the patterns, the odds, but every time there was that gnawing fear in the back of his mind, the fear that they'd be too late, that the forest would take another one, that the parents would go home without their child. Ember moved fast, nose sweeping left and right, her body low to the ground. She was locked in, focused, every muscle working in perfect harmony. Ryan trusted her completely. He had to. They searched for hours. The moon rose, casting pale light through the canopy. The voices of the other searchers grew distant, then faded altogether. Ryan's flashlight flickered once, then died. He cursed under his breath, pulled out a backup, kept moving. Ember didn't slow. She never did. And then, just before dawn, she stopped. Her body went rigid. Her ears swiveled forward. She looked up at Ryan and he saw it. The change in her eyes. The certainty. She'd found something. Ryan keyed his radio. "Dispatch. I think we've got her." He pushed through the last stand of trees. Ember ahead of him now, pulling against the lead. The fog was thick here, hanging low over the ground like a blanket. And through it, he saw the shape. A girl, standing, still, and beside her, the dog. Ryan's breath stopped, because in that moment he knew, whatever this was, it wasn't over. It was just beginning. Ryan's first instinct was to move forward, to close the distance, to grab the girl, to get her out of the woods and back to her parents. But something held him back, a whisper of caution that crept up his spine like cold water. Ember was still frozen. Her body was tense, every muscle coiled, but she wasn't barking. She wasn't lunging. She was just watching, waiting, as if she too didn't understand what she was seeing. Ryan took a slow breath. He lowered his voice to barely a whisper. "Mia?" The girl didn't turn. Her hand stayed on the dog's head, fingers buried in its matted fur. The dog's ears twitched, swiveling toward the sound of Ryan's voice, but it didn't move. Its yellow eyes remained fixed on something in the fog, something Ryan couldn't see. He took another step. A twig snapped under his boot, and the dog's head turned, slowly, deliberately. Its gaze locked onto Ryan, and for a moment he felt the weight of it, the cold, assessing intelligence of a creature that had learned long ago that humans were not to be trusted. Ember growled again, low and warning. Ryan felt the vibration through the lead. He placed a hand on her head, a silent command. "Easy. Not yet." "Mia," he said again, louder this time. "My name is Captain Holt. I'm here to help you. Your mom and dad are waiting for you." The girl blinked. Once. Twice. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. And then, slowly, she turned her head toward him. Ryan's heart lurched. Her face was pale, smudged with dirt and streaked with tears long dried. Her eyes were dark, wide and hollow, eyes that had seen something no 7-year-old should ever see. But there was no fear in them, no relief, just a strange, distant calm, as if she'd gone somewhere far away and hadn't quite found her way back. "Mia," Ryan said gently, crouching down to make himself smaller, less threatening. "You're safe now. We're going to take you home." The girl's eyes flicked to the dog, and then, in a voice so soft Ryan almost didn't hear it, she said, "She won't leave me." Ryan frowned. "Who won't leave you?" "Her." Mia's hand moved gently over the dog's head, a gesture so tender it looked like a blessing. "She stayed with me all night. She kept the others away." Ryan's pulse quickened. "The others?" Mia nodded. "The ones in the trees. The ones with the teeth." A chill ran down Ryan's spine. He glanced at Ember, then back at the girl. "Mia, are you hurt? Are you okay?" "She wouldn't let them get close," Mia said, as if she hadn't heard the question. "She growled and they ran away. She licked my face when I cried. She's my friend now." Ryan's throat tightened. He keyed his radio, keeping his voice low. "Dispatch. I need a medic at my location. Child is conscious and responsive, but disoriented. No visible injuries, but we've got a feral dog with her. I repeat, a feral dog. I need animal control on standby." The radio crackled. "Copy that, Captain. EMS is en route. Animal control will be advised." Ryan clipped the radio back to his belt and looked at the dog again. It was still sitting, still calm, its eyes now half closed. Its breathing was slow and steady. It didn't look aggressive, didn't look dangerous. It looked tired, like it had been through a war and was finally allowed to rest. But Ryan knew better. He'd seen dogs like this before. Strays, ferals, animals that had been abandoned or abused or born into a world where survival meant violence. They didn't trust, they didn't bond, and they sure as hell didn't sit calmly beside a child they'd just met. Unless something had happened. Ryan moved closer. Inch by inch, his hand extended, palm up. Ember followed, her body still tense but her aggression fading. She could sense Ryan's intent, the careful, deliberate calm he projected. "Hey there," Ryan said softly, addressing the dog now. "It's okay, no one's going to hurt you." The dog's eyes opened fully. It stared at him, unblinking, and then, slowly, it stood. Ryan froze. The dog was bigger than he'd thought, taller. Its legs were long and lean, built for running, for chasing, for surviving. Its ribs jutted out beneath its patchy coat, and scars crisscrossed its muzzle and shoulders, evidence of fights, of hardship, of a life lived on the edge of death. But it didn't growl, didn't bare its teeth. It just stood there, body tense, waiting. Mia's hand fell away from its head. She looked up at Ryan, and for the first time her eyes filled with tears. "Please don't hurt her." Ryan's chest tightened. "I won't. I promise. They'll take her away," Mia whispered. "They always do." Ryan knelt beside her, eye level now. "Mia, I need you to trust me. Can you do that?" She nodded, her small hands curling into fists. "Good," Ryan said. "Now, I need you to come with me. Your mom and dad are really worried about you, but I'll make sure she's okay, I promise." Mia hesitated. She looked at the dog, then back at Ryan. "You promise?" "I promise." Slowly, carefully, Mia stood. She was unsteady on her feet, her legs weak from a night spent in the cold. Ryan reached out and she took his hand. Her fingers were ice cold. The dog watched. Its ears were forward, its tail low but not tucked. It didn't follow. It just stood there, silent, as Ryan led Mia away. Ember stayed close, her eyes locked on the feral dog, her body still coiled. She didn't like this, didn't trust it, but she followed Ryan's lead, as she always did. They'd gone maybe 10 steps when Ryan heard it. A low, mournful whine. He stopped, turned. The dog was still standing in the clearing, but now its head was lowered, its body trembling. It looked lost, abandoned, as if the only thing in the world that mattered had just walked away. Mia pulled against Ryan's hand. "She's sad," she said, her voice breaking. "She doesn't want to be alone." Ryan's jaw tightened. He knew what he should do. He knew the protocol. Feral dogs were dangerous, unpredictable. They didn't belong around people, especially children. The right thing to do was to call animal control, have them trap it, assess it, and, if it couldn't be rehabilitated, euthanize it. But something stopped him. Maybe it was the way the dog had sat beside Mia, calm and protective. Maybe it was the way it had stayed with her through the night, when it could have just as easily left her to die. Or maybe it was the look in its eyes, the look of a creature that had done something it didn't understand, something instinctual and ancient, and was now waiting to be punished for it. Ryan made a decision. "Come," he called out, his voice firm but not harsh. The dog's ears perked up. "Come," Ryan said again, and slowly, hesitantly, the dog moved, one step, then another. Its body was low, cautious, every movement a question, but it came. Ember stiffened, but Ryan placed a hand on her head. "Easy." The dog stopped a few feet away, its yellow eyes locked on Ryan's, and then, in a gesture that seemed almost like surrender, it lowered its head and sat. Ryan exhaled. "Good," he said quietly. "Good." He pulled out his radio. "Dispatch. Cancel animal control. I'm bringing the dog in with us. I'll handle it personally." There was a pause. Then, "Copy that, Captain." "Your call." Ryan looked at Mia. She was smiling now, just a little, the first real expression he'd seen on her face. He looked at Ember, who was still tense but no longer aggressive, and then he looked at the dog, this scarred, broken creature that had somehow found enough humanity left inside itself to protect a child. "All right," Ryan said, "let's go home." And as they walked back through the fog, the four of them, man, girl, trained canine, and feral dog, Ryan couldn't shake the feeling that he'd just stepped into something far bigger than a simple rescue. He just didn't know what yet. The trailhead was chaos. Floodlights blazed against the dark, casting long shadows that stretched across the dirt parking lot like fingers. Paramedics swarmed the moment Ryan emerged from the trees, Mia's hand still clutched in his. Karen Brennan screamed, a raw guttural sound that tore through the night, and stumbled forward, her husband right behind her. Mia released Ryan's hand and ran into her mother's arms, and the two of them collapsed together onto the ground, sobbing, holding each other as if they'd been separated for years instead of hours. Ryan stepped back, giving them space. His chest felt tight, his hands were shaking. He didn't know if it was adrenaline or exhaustion or something else entirely. Ember pressed against his leg, her body warm and solid. She was looking back at the trees, ears forward, alert, and then Ryan saw what she was looking at, the dog. It had followed them out of the woods, but it hadn't come all the way into the clearing. It stood just beyond the edge of the floodlights, half hidden in shadow, its yellow eyes reflecting the light like twin coins. It was watching, waiting. Deputy Mark Torres approached, flashlight in hand, his face set in a hard line. He was a big man, broad-shouldered, with a thick mustache and a voice that carried. "Ryan, what the hell is that?" Ryan turned. "It's a stray. It was with the girl." "With her?" Torres frowned. "You mean near her?" "No, with her. It stayed with her all night. Kept her safe." Torres stared at him like he'd just grown a second head. "That's a feral dog, Ryan? Look at it. It's half-starved, scarred to hell, probably diseased. We need to call animal control, get it trapped and put down before—" "No," Ryan said, his voice flat and firm. Torres blinked. "Excuse me?" "I said no." Ryan met his gaze, unflinching. "That dog protected a 7-year-old girl in the middle of the woods for 12 hours. It didn't attack her, didn't bite her, it kept her warm, it kept her alive. So no, we're not putting it down." "Ryan, I'm taking responsibility for it," Ryan said. "I'll get it checked out, vaccinated, whatever it needs." "But we're not killing it." Torres opened his mouth, then closed it. He looked at the dog, then back at Ryan, then shook his head. "Your funeral." He walked away, muttering under his breath. Ryan exhaled. His hands were still shaking. A paramedic approached. A young woman with red hair pulled back in a ponytail and kind eyes. "Captain Holt, we're taking Mia to the hospital just as a precaution. She seems okay, but we want to run some tests, make sure she's not hypothermic or dehydrated." Ryan nodded. "Good, that's good. Her parents said she keeps asking about a dog." The paramedic glanced toward the trees. "Is that it?" Ryan followed her gaze. The dog was still there, still watching. "Yeah, that's it. She said it saved her life." "Yeah," Ryan said quietly. "I think it did." The paramedic smiled. "Then I guess it's not all bad, huh?" Ryan didn't answer. He wasn't sure yet. By the time the crowd dispersed and the floodlights were turned off, it was nearly dawn. The sky was pale grey, streaked with pink and gold, and the air had that crisp, clean quality that only came in the early morning. Ryan stood alone in the parking lot, Ember at his side, staring at the edge of the woods. The dog was gone. He didn't know when it had left, didn't hear it move. One moment it was there, and the next it wasn't. Ember whined softly, her nose pointed toward the trees. "I know," Ryan murmured. "I know." He climbed into his truck, Ember hopping in beside him, and drove back to the station. He was exhausted, his eyes burning, his body aching, but his mind wouldn't stop. Why had the dog stayed with Mia? What had made it choose to protect her instead of running, instead of attacking, instead of doing what every feral dog in history had done when cornered? And where the hell had it gone? That afternoon, Ryan went to the hospital. Mia was in a private room, propped up in bed with a juice box in one hand and a stuffed bear in the other. Her parents sat on either side of her, their faces drawn and pale but relieved. Karen looked up when Ryan entered, and her eyes filled with tears again. "Captain Holt," she said, standing. I don't know how to thank you." Ryan waved her off. "I was just doing my job." "You brought her back," Karen said, her voice breaking. "You brought my baby back." Ryan nodded, his throat tight. He looked at Mia. "Hey kiddo, how are you feeling?" Mia smiled. It was a small, tired smile, but it was real. "Okay, they gave me pudding." Ryan chuckled. "Pudding's good." "Where's the dog?" Mia asked, her smile fading. Ryan hesitated. I don't know. She left." Mia's face crumpled. "But you promised. You said you'd keep her safe." "I'm trying, Mia. I really am, but she's wild. She doesn't trust people." "And she trusted me," Mia said, her voice fierce despite the tears streaming down her face. "She stayed with me when I was scared. She didn't leave. She didn't give up." Ryan knelt beside the bed. "Mia, can you tell me what happened? From the beginning?" Mia sniffled, wiping her nose with the back of her hand. "We were hiking, me and Mom and Dad, and I saw a butterfly, a big yellow one, and I followed it, and then I got lost. What did you do? I called for Mom and Dad, but they didn't come, and it got dark, and I was scared. She looked down at her hands, and then I heard something in the trees, something big. Ryan's stomach tightened. What was it? I don't know. I couldn't see it, but it was growling, and I thought it was going to eat me. And then she came. Mia's eyes brightened. The dog. She just appeared out of nowhere, and she stood between me and the thing in the trees, and she growled back, and the thing ran away. Ryan felt a chill run down his spine, and after that, she stayed with me all night. She lay down next to me and let me put my head on her. She was warm, and she smelled bad, but I didn't care. She made me feel safe. Ryan swallowed hard. Did she ever try to hurt you? Did she bite you or? No, Mia said, shaking her head. She licked my face. She whined when I cried. She was nice. Karen reached out and touched Ryan's arm. Captain, my daughter is alive because of that dog. Whatever it is, wherever it came from, it saved her. And I don't know how, but I think it knew. I think it knew she needed help. Ryan nodded slowly. I think you're right. That evening, Ryan sat on his porch again, Ember beside him, a beer in his hand that he still wasn't drinking. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. The air was warm, heavy with the scent of dry grass and wildflowers. And then he saw it. At the edge of his yard, just beyond the fence, the dog appeared. It stood perfectly still, half hidden in the tall grass, its yellow eyes locked on him. It didn't come closer, didn't run, just watched. Ember stood, ears forward, body tense. But she didn't bark. Ryan set down his beer and stood slowly. Hey, he called out, his voice soft. It's okay. I'm not going to hurt you. The dog didn't move. Ryan reached into his pocket and pulled out a piece of jerky he'd been saving for Ember. He tossed it toward the fence. It landed a few feet from the dog. The dog sniffed the air, its nose twitched, and then slowly, cautiously, it moved forward. It took the jerky in its mouth, chewed once, twice, and swallowed. Ryan smiled. Good, he murmured. Good. He went inside, grabbed a bowl of water and a handful of kibble, and set them on the porch. Then he stepped back and waited. The dog watched him, and after a long, tense moment, it moved closer. One step, then another. It crossed the fence line, moved through the yard, and stopped at the base of the porch steps. Ryan didn't move, didn't speak, just let it come at its own pace. And then, finally, the dog climbed the steps. It drank from the bowl, ate the kibble, and lay down at the far end of the porch, its eyes still fixed on Ryan. Ember whined softly. It's okay, Ryan whispered. She's okay. And as the sun set and the stars began to appear, Ryan sat down on the porch steps, Ember on one side, the feral dog on the other, and for the first time in a long time, he felt something he hadn't felt in years. Hope. But the story was far from over, because in the days that followed, Ryan would learn that the dog's past was darker than he'd imagined, and the truth of why it had saved Mia would force him to confront a reality he'd spent his entire career trying to avoid. The dog stayed. Not inside the house, not yet, but on the porch, curled in the far corner near the railing, where it could see the yard and the road beyond. Every morning, Ryan would wake to find it there, yellow eyes open, watching the sunrise. Every evening, it would return, slipping through the shadows like a ghost, silent and watchful. Ryan named her Scout. It felt right. She was a sentinel, a guardian, something ancient and instinctual that had emerged from the wild to fulfill a purpose she didn't fully understand. Ember accepted her presence slowly, warily, but without aggression. The two dogs circled each other for days, sniffing, testing boundaries, learning the language of pack and hierarchy. Eventually, they settled into an uneasy truce, Ember inside the house, Scout on the porch, and Ryan as the bridge between them. But the town didn't accept her so easily. Word spread fast in Crestwood. Within 48 hours, everyone knew about the wild dog that had saved little Mia Brennan. Opinions split down the middle. Some called it a miracle, a sign of something good still left in the world. Others called it dangerous, a ticking time bomb that would eventually snap and hurt someone. Ryan started getting calls. The first was from Martha Connolly, the elderly woman who lived 3 houses down. Her voice was thin and tight with worry. Ryan, honey, I heard about that dog you've got. I just want you to be careful. My sister had a stray once, fed it for weeks, and one day it turned on her, bit her right on the hand, needed 12 stitches. Ryan thanked her and assured her Scout was being monitored. The second call was from Deputy Torres. "Ryan, I'm getting complaints. Mrs. Phelps says she saw your dog wandering near the elementary school. People are scared." "She wasn't wandering," Ryan said evenly. "She was with me. I was dropping off supplies for the safety assembly. Still, people are nervous. And if something happens, nothing's going to happen." Torres sighed. "You're a stubborn son of a bitch. You know that." "Yeah," Ryan said. "I know." The third call came from Dr. Ellen Marsh, the town's only veterinarian. She was in her 60s, sharp-eyed and no-nonsense, with a reputation for treating every animal that came through her door like it was her own. Ryan liked her. "Ryan, bring that dog in," she said without preamble. "I want to check her out. Vaccines, blood work, the whole 9 yards. If you're going to keep her, we do it right." Ryan agreed immediately. That afternoon, he loaded Scout into the truck. She didn't resist, just climbed in and sat in the back seat, her eyes fixed on the window, and drove to the clinic. Dr. Marsh was waiting outside, arms crossed, her grey hair pulled back in a loose bun. She looked at Scout through the truck window and let out a low whistle. "Hell of a dog you've got there, Ryan." "Yeah," Ryan said. "She is." Scout didn't struggle when they brought her inside. She moved slowly, cautiously, but without panic. "Doctor," Marsh spoke to her in a low, calm voice as she examined her, checking her teeth, her ears, her coat. She drew blood, administered vaccines, and carefully stitched up a few of the deeper scars that hadn't healed properly. "She's been through hell," Dr. Marsh said quietly, her hands gentle as she worked. "Look at these scars. Bite marks. Burns. This one here." She pointed to a long, jagged line across Scout's ribs. "Looks like barbed wire. She's been fighting for her life for a long time." Ryan's jaw tightened. "How old do you think she is?" 3, maybe 4, hard to say. Malnutrition stunts growth, but she's strong, resilient. Most dogs wouldn't have survived what she's been through. Can you tell if she's been abused? Trained to fight?" Dr. Marsh paused. She looked at Scout, then at Ryan. "I don't think she was trained to fight. Fighting dogs have a certain look, overdeveloped muscles, cropped ears, aggressive posture. Scout doesn't have that, but she's been hurt. Badly. And my guess? She's been on her own for a while. Months, maybe longer." Ryan nodded. "So what now?" "Now?" Dr. Marsh smiled faintly. "Now you give her a chance. Feed her. Let her rest. Let her learn that not all humans are monsters. And if you're lucky, she'll start to trust you. And if I'm not lucky, then she'll leave, and you'll never see her again." That night, Ryan sat on the porch again, Scout lying a few feet away. The stars were out, thick and bright, and the air was cool and still. Ember was inside, curled up on the couch, her breathing slow and steady. Ryan looked at Scout. "You've been through hell, haven't you?" Scout's ears twitched, her eyes opened, just a sliver. "I don't know what happened to you," Ryan said quietly. "I don't know who hurt you or why, but you're safe now, you understand, you're safe." Scout didn't respond, but her tail moved just once, a single, slow wag. Ryan smiled. "Yeah, we'll figure it out." 3 days later, Ryan got a call that changed everything. It was from Deputy Torres. His voice was tense, urgent. "Ryan, we've got a situation. Someone just reported a dog matching Scout's description at the old Hendricks property. They said it looked aggressive, like it was guarding something." Ryan's pulse quickened. "What do you mean, guarding something?" "I don't know, but the caller said there's blood, and they heard barking. A lot of it." Ryan was already moving. "I'm on my way." He loaded Scout and Ember into the truck and drove fast, his mind racing. The Hendricks property was an abandoned farmhouse on the east side of town, surrounded by overgrown fields and rusted machinery. It had been empty for years, a place where kids went to smoke and vandals went to break things. When Ryan arrived, Deputy Torres was already there, standing beside his cruiser with his hand on his holster. 2 other deputies were with him, flashlights drawn. "Ryan, I don't think this is a good idea," Torres said. "If that dog's—" "She's with me," Ryan said, gesturing to Scout, who was sitting calmly in the back seat. "If there's another dog out here, she'll know." Torres frowned but didn't argue. "Fine, but we're going in together." They moved as a group, flashlights sweeping the tall grass. The farmhouse loomed ahead, its windows dark and broken, its roof sagging like a tired old man. The air smelled of decay and rust. And then Ryan heard it. Barking, high-pitched, frantic. Scout's ears shot forward. She stared at the farmhouse, her body tense, her tail low. "Come on," Ryan said. They entered through the back door, stepping carefully over rotting floorboards. The barking grew louder, coming from somewhere below. A basement. Ryan found the stairs, descended slowly, his flashlight cutting through the darkness, and then he saw it. A chain, bolted to the wall, and at the end of the chain, a dog. It was a pit bull, young, maybe a year old, with a brown and white coat and wide, terrified eyes. Its ribs showed through its skin, and its paws were bloody from scratching at the concrete floor. Beside it, overturned, was an empty water bowl. Ryan's stomach turned. Jesus Christ! Torres cursed under his breath. Someone chained it down here and left it to die. Ryan moved forward, his voice soft. Hey, buddy. It's okay. We're here to help. The dog lunged at him, barking, snarling, its teeth bared. Ryan stepped back, his heart pounding, and then Scout moved. She descended the stairs slowly, her body low, her ears back. She didn't growl, didn't bark. She just moved forward, step by step, until she was standing between Ryan and the chained dog. The pit bull stopped barking, its ears flattened. It stared at Scout, its body trembling. Scout lowered her head. She sniffed the air. And then, in a gesture so gentle it took Ryan's breath away, she lay down. The pit bull hesitated. And then, slowly, it lay down too. Ryan exhaled. Torres, call Dr. Marsh. Tell her we're bringing in another one. Torres nodded, already pulling out his phone. Ryan looked at Scout, his chest tight. You knew, he whispered. Didn't you? You knew this place. You've been here before. Scout's eyes met his, and in them, Ryan saw something he hadn't seen before. Pain, memory, and something else. Recognition. That night, after the pit bull had been safely removed and taken to Dr. Marsh's clinic, Ryan sat on his porch with Scout and Ember. The stars were out again, and the air was cool and still. You were here, Ryan said quietly. Weren't you? Chained up just like that dog. Scout didn't answer, but her tail moved just once. Ryan's throat tightened. And you got free. Somehow you got free. And instead of running, instead of leaving this place forever, you came back. You've been coming back, checking, looking for others. Scout's ears twitched. Ryan exhaled, his eyes burning. You're not just a survivor, Scout. You're a damn hero. And as the night deepened and the stars wheeled overhead, Ryan made a silent promise. He would find out who had done this. He would make sure no other dog ever suffered the way Scout had, and he would give her the life she deserved. But first, he had to uncover the truth. And the truth, he would soon learn, was darker and more human than he ever imagined. The investigation moved fast. Deputy Torres and his team found records, faded, half-destroyed documents stuffed into a rusted filing cabinet in the farmhouse basement. Names, dates, transactions. The Hendricks property, it turned out, hadn't been abandoned at all. It had been a front. For years, someone had been using the farmhouse as a hub for an underground dog-fighting ring. The evidence was everywhere once they knew where to look. Bloodstains on the concrete, chains bolted into the walls, makeshift cages built from scrap metal. The place reeked of violence and despair, and the more they uncovered, the sicker Ryan felt. But the name at the top of the document stopped him cold. Cole Hendricks. Ryan knew that name. Everyone in Crestwood did. Cole was a fixture in town, a mechanic, a regular at the diner, a man who smiled easily and helped neighbors fix their trucks for free. He'd lived in Crestwood his entire life, just like his father before him. People liked him, trusted him, and all the while he'd been running a dog-fighting operation in the basement of his family's old farmhouse. Torres stood beside Ryan, staring at the name on the paper. His face was pale, his jaw tight. I've known Cole since high school. We played football together. I can't believe this. Ryan's hands were shaking. We need to find him now. Torres nodded. We've got an APB out. He's not at his house. His truck's gone, but we'll find him. And when you do, Ryan's voice was low, dangerous. I want to be there. Torres met his gaze. Ryan, I want to be there, Ryan repeated. Torres sighed. All right, but you let us handle it. No heroics. Ryan didn't answer. They found Cole Hendricks 2 days later, holed up in a motel 30 miles outside of town. He didn't resist when the deputies kicked down the door. He just sat on the edge of the bed, head in his hands, his face gaunt and hollow. Ryan stood in the doorway, Scout at his side. She was calm, but her eyes were locked on Cole, unblinking, unwavering. Cole looked up. His eyes widened when he saw the dog. That's one of mine. Ryan's blood ran cold. What did you say? Cole's voice was flat, dead. That dog. She was one of mine. I thought she was dead. I thought they all were. Ryan took a step forward. Torres put a hand on his shoulder, but Ryan shook it off. You did this to her. Cole didn't deny it. He just stared at Scout, his face twisted with something that might have been guilt or regret or shame. Ryan couldn't tell and didn't care. She was supposed to fight, Cole said quietly. That's what she was bred for. But she wouldn't do it. She'd just stand there, let the other dogs tear into her. And when they did, she'd just take it. Wouldn't fight back, wouldn't run, just took it. Ryan's hands curled into fists. So you chained her up, left her to die. Cole's eyes filled with tears. I didn't know what else to do. She was useless, and people were getting suspicious. I had to shut it down. So I left them, all of them. I thought they'd just go quiet, but they didn't. They kept barking, kept crying. And I couldn't go back. You're a coward, Ryan said, his voice shaking. You're a goddamn coward. Cole nodded. Yeah, I am. Torres stepped forward. Cole Hendricks, you're under arrest for animal cruelty, illegal gambling, and operating an unlawful enterprise. You have the right to remain silent. Ryan stopped listening. He looked at Scout, who was still staring at Cole with those unblinking yellow eyes, and in that moment, Ryan understood. Scout hadn't stayed with Mia because of training. She hadn't stayed because she was domesticated, or because she wanted food or shelter. She'd stayed because she knew what it meant to be abandoned, to be left alone in the dark, to cry for help and hear nothing in return. She'd stayed because somewhere deep in her broken, battered heart, she'd decided that no one, human or animal, should ever feel that kind of loneliness again. And when she heard Mia crying in the woods, scared and lost and calling for her parents, Scout hadn't seen a child. She'd seen herself. The trial was swift. Cole pleaded guilty to all charges and was sentenced to 5 years in prison. The dogs that had been rescued from the Hendricks property were placed in foster care, most of them eventually adopted into loving homes. The pit bull Ryan had found chained in the basement, a dog doctor, Marsh named Jasper, went to live with a retired firefighter in Dallas who specialized in rehabilitating traumatized animals. Scout stayed with Ryan. She moved from the porch to the house slowly, one step at a time. First, she slept just inside the door, then by the couch. Then one night, Ryan woke to find her curled at the foot of his bed, her head resting on his ankle. Ember accepted her fully. The two dogs became inseparable, moving through the house like shadows. Their movements synchronized, their bond unspoken but absolute. And Mia visited often. Karen Brennan would bring her by once a week, and Mia would sit on the floor with Scout and Ember, laughing as they licked her face and wagged their tails. She never forgot what Scout had done for her. Neither did her parents. One afternoon, as Ryan watched Mia play in the yard with the dogs, Karen approached him. Her eyes were bright, her smile soft. You saved her life, Captain Holt. Ryan shook his head. Scout did, not me. Karen looked at the dog, who was lying in the grass beside Mia, her eyes half closed in the warm sunlight. Maybe, but you saved Scout's life too, so I guess that makes you even. Ryan smiled. Yeah, I guess it does. Months passed. Scout gained weight. Her coat grew thick and glossy. The scars remained, but they faded, becoming part of her story rather than the whole of it. She learned commands, sit, stay, come, and responded with a quiet, dignified obedience that reminded Ryan of old soldiers who'd seen too much but kept going anyway. She never barked, not once, but she watched, always watched. And whenever Ryan went out on a call, Scout would sit by the door until he came home, her yellow eyes fixed on the driveway, waiting. One evening, as Ryan sat on the porch with both dogs, watching the sun set over the Texas hills, he thought about everything that had happened. About Mia, lost and alone in the woods. About Scout, broken and abandoned, but still willing to give everything to save someone else. About the way the world could be cruel and kind in equal measure, and how sometimes the smallest acts of grace could change everything. Ember rested her head on his knee. Scout lay a few feet away, her eyes half closed, her breathing slow and steady. Ryan reached out and placed a hand on Scout's head. She didn't flinch, didn't pull away. You're home now, Ryan said quietly. You understand? You're home. Scout's tail wagged, just once, but it was enough. The following spring, the Crestwood Fire Department held its annual community safety fair in the park downtown. Booths lined the walkways, offering everything from free smoke detector installations to CPR demonstrations to face painting for the kids. The sun was bright, the air warm and sweet with the smell of blooming wildflowers and barbecue from the food trucks parked along the street. Ryan stood near the fire truck, Ember and Scout at his side. Both dogs wore red bandanas around their necks, and both looked calm and content as children approached to pet them. Ember, ever the professional, sat perfectly still, her tail wagging gently as small hands stroked her fur. Scout, though more reserved, allowed the attention with quiet grace, her yellow eyes soft as she watched the children laugh and play. A little girl, no more than 5, approached cautiously. She had dark curls and wide brown eyes, and she clutched her mother's hand tightly. "Can I pet the doggy?" she asked, her voice small. Ryan smiled. "Of course. Her name is Scout. She's very gentle." The girl reached out, her fingers brushing Scout's head. Scout leaned into the touch just slightly, and the girl's face lit up with a smile so bright it could have rivaled the sun. "She's soft," the girl whispered. "She is," Ryan agreed. "And she's very brave. She saved someone once." The girl's eyes widened. "Really? Really?" The girl beamed, then turned to her mother. "I want to be brave like her." Ryan's chest tightened. He watched the girl and her mother walk away hand in hand and felt something shift inside him, something warm and solid and right. Mia Brennan arrived later that afternoon, her parents in tow. She ran straight to Scout, dropping to her knees and wrapping her arms around the dog's neck. Scout's tail wagged, a full sweeping motion, and she licked Mia's cheek. "Hi, Scout," Mia said, her voice bright with joy. "I missed you." Scout huffed softly, a sound that was almost like a sigh of contentment. Karen Brennan approached Ryan, her eyes shining. "She talks about Scout every day. She tells everyone at school about the dog who saved her life." Ryan smiled. "Scout's pretty special." "She is," Karen agreed. "And so are you. You didn't have to take her in. You didn't have to fight for her, but you did, and I think that says a lot about who you are." Ryan didn't know what to say to that, so he just nodded, his throat tight. As the day wore on and the sun began to dip toward the horizon, Ryan found himself standing alone at the edge of the park, watching the crowd. Families laughed and played. Children ran with balloons tied to their wrists. The air was filled with music and laughter, and the hum of life unfolding in all its messy, beautiful complexity. Ember and Scout sat beside him, their bodies relaxed, their eyes watchful but calm. "You know," Ryan said quietly, more to himself than to the dogs, "I used to think the job was about saving people, about pulling them out of burning buildings or finding them when they were lost. But I think it's more than that. I think it's about giving them a reason to believe that there's still good in the world, that there's still hope." Ember's tail wagged. Scout's ears twitched. "And you too?" Ryan looked down at them, his eyes soft. "You remind me of that every single day." That night, after the fair had ended and the park had emptied, Ryan drove home with the windows down and the radio off. The stars were out, bright and countless, and the air smelled of rain coming in from the west. Scout and Ember sat in the back seat, their heads resting against each other, their breathing slow and steady. When they arrived home, Ryan let them out, and they ran into the yard, chasing fireflies that blinked like tiny lanterns in the dark. He watched them for a long time, his heart full in a way it hadn't been in years. Later, as he sat on the porch with a cup of coffee cooling in his hands, Scout climbed the steps and lay down beside him. She rested her head on his knee, and Ryan stroked her fur, his fingers tracing the faded scars that told the story of her survival. "You've come a long way," he said softly, "and you've still got a long way to go. But you're going to be okay. I promise." Scout's tail wagged, just once. But it was enough, and as the rain began to fall, soft and steady, drumming against the roof and soaking into the dry earth, Ryan closed his eyes and let himself feel something he hadn't felt in a long time: peace. 2 years later, Scout became a certified therapy dog. It took time, hours of training, patience, and trust building, but Scout proved herself again and again, moving through hospitals and schools and nursing homes with the same quiet grace she'd shown in the woods that night with Mia. She had a gift for sensing pain, for knowing when someone needed comfort without being told. She would sit beside hospital beds, her head resting gently on blankets, her eyes soft and full of understanding. She would let children bury their faces in her fur and cry, holding space for their grief without judgment or fear. Ryan went with her on every visit, and every time he watched in awe as Scout did what she'd always done, gave everything she had to those who needed it most. One afternoon they visited a children's hospital in Dallas. A little boy no more than 8 was recovering from surgery. He was pale and thin, his eyes hollow with exhaustion and fear. His mother sat beside him, her face drawn and tired. Ryan approached quietly. "Hi there, I'm Captain Holt, and this is Scout. She's here to visit, if that's okay with you." The boy's eyes flicked to Scout. He didn't say anything, just stared. Ryan brought Scout closer, and she moved slowly, carefully, as if she understood how fragile the boy was. She rested her head on the edge of the bed, her eyes soft and steady. The boy's hand moved, trembling, and touched Scout's head. His fingers curled into her fur, and then, for the first time in days, the boy smiled. His mother covered her mouth, tears streaming down her face. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you." Ryan nodded, his chest tight. "She's the one you should thank." Back in Crestwood, Scout became something of a legend. People told stories about her. The wild dog who'd saved a little girl, the survivor who'd turned her pain into purpose. Children drew pictures of her in school. The local newspaper ran a feature article, and every year on the anniversary of Mia's rescue, the town held a small ceremony in the park, honoring Scout and all the animals who'd been saved from the Hendricks property. Mia, now 9 years old, spoke at the ceremony. She stood at the microphone, her voice clear and strong, and told the story of the night Scout had stayed with her in the woods. "I was so scared," she said. "I thought I was going to die, but Scout didn't let me give up. She stayed with me, even when she didn't have to, even when it would have been easier to leave, and she reminded me that I wasn't alone, that I never was." She looked at Scout, who was sitting beside Ryan at the edge of the stage. "Thank you, Scout, for everything." The crowd erupted in applause. Scout's tail wagged. Ryan retired from the fire department 5 years later. He'd served for over 2 decades, saved more lives than he could count, and trained 3 more K9 teams. But his body was wearing down, and he knew it was time. On his last day, the department held a small ceremony. His colleagues gave speeches, shook his hand, presented him with a plaque that read, "In recognition of years of service, dedication, and heroism." But the moment that mattered most came when Deputy Torres approached him, a small black puppy cradled in his arms. "This is for you," Torres said, his voice gruff but warm. "Her name's Spark. She's Scout's daughter." Ryan's eyes widened. Scout had a litter, 6 pups. Dr. Marsh oversaw the whole thing. We found good homes for all of them. But this one— Torres looked down at the puppy, who was staring up at Ryan with bright, curious eyes. "This one's got her mother's spirit. And I thought she should stay with you." Ryan took the puppy in his arms, his throat tight. Spark licked his face, her tail wagging furiously. "Thank you," Ryan said quietly. "Thank you." Torres smiled. "Take care of yourself, Ryan, and take care of them." Ryan's days now were quieter. He woke with the sun, made coffee, and sat on the porch with Scout, Ember, and Spark. He walked them through the woods, the same woods where Scout had once been lost and alone. He volunteered at the local animal shelter, helped train new therapy dogs, and spent his evenings reading or watching the stars. Scout was older now. Her muzzle had turned grey, and she moved more slowly, her joints stiff from years of hard living. But her eyes were still bright, still watchful, still full of that quiet, unshakable strength that had saved a little girl's life all those years ago. One evening, as the sun set and the sky turned gold and pink, Ryan sat on the porch with all 3 dogs. Ember was dozing, her head resting on her paws. Spark was playing in the yard, chasing a tennis ball with boundless energy. And Scout lay beside Ryan, her head resting on his knee. Ryan stroked her fur, his heart full. "You've had a good life, Scout. You know that?" Scout's tail wagged, just once. "You took all that pain, all that suffering, and you turned it into something beautiful. You saved lives, you gave people hope, and you reminded me that even when the world is cruel, there's still goodness in it, still love." Scout's eyes closed, her breathing slowed. Ryan leaned down and pressed a kiss to the top of her head. "Thank you," he whispered, "for everything." Scout passed away peacefully in her sleep 3 months later, surrounded by the people and animals she loved. Ryan buried her in the backyard, beneath a willow tree that swayed gently in the breeze. He planted wildflowers around the grave, bluebonnets and Indian paintbrush, the kind that bloomed every spring and filled the air with color. Mia came to the service. She knelt beside the grave and placed a small stone on the earth, a tradition her mother had taught her. On the stone, she'd written a single word: hero. Ryan stood beside her, his hand resting gently on her shoulder. "She was," he said quietly. "She really was." Mia looked up at him, tears streaming down her face. Do you think she knew? Do you think she knew how much she meant to all of us? Ryan smiled, his eyes shining. Yeah, I think she did. Years later, when people asked Ryan about Scout, he always told them the same thing. She wasn't just a dog, she was a reminder. A reminder that love isn't something you're born with, it's something you choose, even when the world has hurt you, even when you've been abandoned and forgotten, even when it would be easier to give up. Scout chose love, over and over again, and because of that she saved more than just one life, she saved all of us. And in the quiet moments when Ryan sat on his porch with Ember and Spark and watched the sun set over the Texas hills, he could still feel Scout's presence, in the way the wind moved through the trees, in the way the wildflowers bloomed every spring, in the way Spark tilted her head and looked at him with those same bright, knowing eyes. Scout was gone, but her legacy lived on, in the children she'd comforted, in the lives she'd saved, in the hearts she'd touched, and in the simple, undeniable truth that even in the darkest places, there is light. You just have to be brave enough to find it. Sometimes heroes don't wear badges. Sometimes they walk on four paws. And sometimes they remind us that the strongest thing in the world isn't power or strength or skill. It's the courage to love, even when love has hurt you. It's the will to stay even when leaving would be easier. And it's the refusal to let the darkness win no matter how deep it runs. Scout knew that, and because she did, the world became a little brighter, a little kinder, a little more whole. And that, more than anything, is what it means to be a hero.